Marsha Timpson. I served as an AmeriCorps member from 1998 to 2001. Without a doubt, the most rewarding years of my life. And you'll find that this will be the same for you. I didn't go into it thinking that. I have to be honest with you. But I sure left it thinking that. In 1995, my marriage broke up. I was living in South Carolina. And I moved back home to West Virginia with my family. I live in War. And in War, the economy's not very good. There aren't a lot of jobs. I worked as a waitress. I started waitressing when I was 15 years old. I worked at a little place in a town of War called the Hole in the Wall, 7 days a week for $20 a week. And I worked from that day on, always waitressing and cleaning houses for people to make a living, to support myself and to support my family. I didn't do volunteer service. I worked to survive. And so in 1995, when I came back to War, those were my skills, were waitressing, cleaning houses. Well, at that time, there were two restaurants in War, Brewster's Drive-In and the Taxi Stand. Well, the women that worked there had worked there for years and for some selfish reason would not give up their jobs for me. And so there went the waitressing. That left cleaning houses for people. So that's what I did. At the beach in 1995, I was making about $400 a week cleaning houses. In War, I was making about $300 to $350 a month. So it was very difficult. We were really struggling. My rent was $200. I didn't receive a welfare check. I did receive food stamps and a card for my children, a medical card, or we couldn't have made it. But it was still very difficult. My big cleaning job was the War Public Library. I made $25 on Tuesday cleaning that one. Well, when I was cleaning the library, children would come in. And you know, children don't see a janitor. They see an adult. And so they would come up to me and I'd be busy and they'd say, "Would you help me hunt a book?" Yeah, you know, and I'd help them hunt a book. And then as children do, they say, "Will you read me this book?" Yeah, so I'd read them the book, you know. Loved it, loved it. Found my talent in life. I loved reading to these children. And so I began to stalk them. When they would come in, if they didn't come to me, I would go to them. And I'd say, "Don't you want a book? Don't you want me to read you this book?" You know. And so that was nice. I was talented at reading and stalking children. But I went to the librarian, Frances Blankenship, and I told her I had never really been able to pick up a regular cleaning job on Friday. So I said, "Frances, on the Fridays I don't clean for someone. Can I come in and read to the children?" She said, "Of course." And so I began to do that. And I began to read to 4 and 5 children on Fridays. And I'm telling y'all, I was talented. I had costumes. I had this little itsy-bitsy spider and a downspout. I mean, I was into this thing. And they began to bust the children from the Head Start and the kindergartens and first grade. I had 40 to 50 children on Fridays. I had found my element. I was having a ball. Well, because of this, when Applereed came into McDowell County, AmeriCorps Applereed came into McDowell County and were hunting for reading coaches in 1998, some of the teachers were kind enough to recommend me for the position. Well, now you're familiar with AmeriCorps. I don't know if you were all familiar with AmeriCorps before you became members. I wasn't. I'd never heard of AmeriCorps. And you know, AmeriCorps, they speak a foreign language. They have that own talk, you know. Like they don't say a job, it's a service. And they don't say a wage, it's a living allowance or a stipend. Well, like I said, I'd worked since I was 15. It was a job, and I wanted to get paid. Mavis Brewster was their vista then at Big Creek People in Action, and she called me. And she said, "Marsha," and she was talking that foreign language, you know. She said, "I want you to come over." She said, "I have a program I want you to volunteer for." I said, "No, thank you." She said, "No, I really think you're going to want to do this." I said, "No, thank you, Mavis." She said, "Marsha," she said, "this is something you would be great at." She said, "It's working with reading for the children." And Applereed, we targeted children that were 1 grade level behind in their reading skills. She said, "You would love this." I said, "Mavis, it sounds wonderful, but I have to work." I said, "I don't have time to volunteer, I have to work." She said, No, you really want to do this." She said, "Come and talk to me about it." I said, "Nope, I have to work. I have to have money to support my family." She said, "Well, you would get a living allowance." I said, "A what?" She said, "A living allowance." I said, how much does that living allowance pay?" And you know, AmeriCorps, they really believe in that making a difference and stuff too. She said, "Oh, that's not important." She said, what's important is making a difference. I thought, well, honey, you ain't cleaning nobody's toilets now, are you? And so she just kept on the talking, and she wore me down, and I thought, well, I'll go over and talk to her. But I wasn't going to do this, knew I wasn't going to do it, but I thought I'd go over and check it out. Talk to Mavis, hadn't seen her in a while. And I went in, and like I said, she explained a little bit about the AmeriCorps program. And I said, Mavis, I really have to have a job. And she said, well, you would get a stipend. That's the good thing about this volunteer service. I said, well, how much is it? I need to know. How much does it pay? No, we don't even want to talk about that at the beginning. AmeriCorps really wants to stress. They want people that want to get things done and make a difference. And I said, well, Mavis, maybe it'll make a difference for me. How much does it pay? She said, no, it's not about making a difference for you. It's about making a difference for others. Well, Mavis droned on and on about this, you know. And she began to wear me down. Mavis was pretty good at that. And I had this little angel sitting on this shoulder. Well, this little angel kind of looked like Mavis, kind of sappy, real sweet little angel. And it was starting to wear me down. And he said, you know, Marsha, this is your chance. This is your opportunity to give back. All your life, people have helped you. Now, this is your chance to help someone else. But I had this other angel sitting on this shoulder. Well, this angel kind of looked like Cuba Gooding Jr. and Jerry Maguire. You know, and old Cuba was saying, show me the money. You know, so for about the 5th time, I said, Mavis, what is this living allowance? What does it pay? And I think at that time, I think she said something like, well, $650 a month. Sign me up. You know. And she said, no. I said, no, sign me up. I can do this. I'll make a difference. You know. And so she signed me up. And, you know, AmeriCorps, they'll also train you to death. And at every training, that's what you hear about, making a difference, getting things done. Well, I have to tell you, I didn't buy that crap for a minute. So I figure I'm a hard worker. I'll give them a decent day wage. They can call it whatever they want to call it. But I'm getting that money. Bartlett was a small school, K through 8, with 117 children. As an Apple Read member, we were to target 10 children and work with them one-on-one. We'd pull them out of class and work with them an hour to hour and a half a day, one-on-one. Then we would go to their homes, and we were required to do 2 home visits per month with a child. So we got to know that child, and we got to know that child's family, and understand a lot maybe why he was having problems or she was having problems at school. So I had a lot of leeway where I could go to their homes. I got to have fun. Some of the teachers, you know, they really don't get to have much fun. They have a curriculum they have to stick to. And they have to stay on that lessons plans and that curriculum. Well, I didn't have to do that. And so, like, I had one child, Roy, that lived on Atwell Mountain. Roy missed a lot of school when it snowed bad. Well, I would always take a spray bottle with Kool-Aid water, and we would do his spelling words in the snow. We'd have lots of fun, and it was great. Jonathan, not so much. Jonathan had a severe speech defect. And he not only didn't like to read in class, Jonathan didn't like to talk in class. Kids can be wonderful, and kids can be cruel. And so when Jonathan would talk, the kids would make fun of him. And so what Jonathan do, he would hit him or strike out. Who got in trouble? Jonathan. And so Jonathan never really looked at me. When we worked together, he always looked down and never really interacted with me much. I had gotten to the bad habit of not looking at Jonathan. And so we were working one day on his spelling words. And at Bartley, they gave me, I worked in the computer lab, which was the old gymnasium. And I had a little corner in there, I worked with the kids. And we were working on his spelling words, and I know it sounds ridiculous, but the word was us. Trust me, we were struggling. We went over and over and over that word, and he just couldn't get it. And so he finally, we did several things with it, and he finally spelled it right. I said, oh, Jonathan, that's great. I said, tell Miss Timpson a sentence with the word us, and I will write it, and then we'll work on it. And this child who never looked at me, who was very quiet, says, Miss Timpson, let us dance. And I said, that's a great sentence. And as I said, I wasn't looking at him. I said, that's a great sentence, Jonathan, and I began to write it. If one of my other children did it, it would be expected. But for Jonathan, it was amazing. I felt a tap on my shoulder. And I looked over and Jonathan says, "Miss Timpson, let us dance." And it blew my mind. And I said, "Jonathan, you make 100 on this spelling test Friday, by God, we'll dance." So that maybe not had been too nice of me, because Jonathan had never passed the spelling test. And on Fridays, we weren't in the school when they had their spelling test. We were at our site, which was Big Creek People in Action. I started out the door. I thought, oh, what if that baby made 100 on that spelling test? Well, he hasn't passed one yet, you know. And so I got in the car and I thought, but what if he did? So I went back and got my daughter's old boombox and carried it out to the car. And I get down to Bartley and I go in. Well, anyway, when I pushed that door open, there stood my little blonde Jonathan at the top of those steps. And he was just kind of hopping from one foot to another. And he was looking right at me. And he said, "Miss Timpson, I made 100. I made 100. Let us dance." I said, "I'll be right back." So I went and got the boombox and come back and dance we did, honey. Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers had nothing on us. We danced all over that gym. For those kids that had tormented Jonathan with his speech, as they took their breaks and went downstairs, they saw us. And they didn't see Jonathan dancing up there with a little short fat woman. They saw him dancing with fluffy little Miss Timpson, whom they loved. So at lunchtime, they all wanted to talk to Jonathan. "I saw you dancing with Miss Timpson." So that moment rippled into how those children perceived Jonathan. That moment rippled because his teacher, she saw he could do it. He was capable of doing it. With a little extra work, a little extra time, he was very capable of doing it. So she began to give him that. And she let him come up there and wait on me that morning. It rippled into how that teacher saw Jonathan. It rippled. As I said, we had to do home visits. The next home visit, his mother finally heard something great had happened to Jonathan. Heck, she was so excited I thought I was going to have to dance with her. But something good happened to Jonathan. So that I didn't make a difference in that child's life forever. But I made a difference in that moment in Jonathan's life. And all those things rippled. So all those differences you make ripple. And that's when I finally got all that crap they've been telling me about. Because at the beginning, then Jonathan was in the first grade. The next year, at the end of his second year, was my last year. You could only serve 2 years as an Applereed reading coach. So that was my last year. And I'm sure you're all familiar with Awards Day and Assembly Days at the school. Well, the principal, Mr. Spencer, announced that Miss Timpson would not be returning, that this was my final year at Bartley Elementary. And they presented me with a dozen roses and a plaque. And as I went forward to get those awards and those roses, all 117 children stood up on those bleachers, and most of the parents, and gave me a standing ovation. And I can tell you, I could stand here all day. I will never, ever be able to tell you what it meant when they did that for me. I can tell you I never got a standing ovation for cleaning anyone's toilets. And some of them I should have, trust me. But I would never do. What I do now is I work with college students on service learning opportunities. I would have never thought I was smart enough or good enough to do that. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with cleaning houses for people. I work at a nonprofit. I may be doing it next week, you know. But there's something wrong when you think you're not capable of anything else. You have no more to give than that. And that's where I was. And that moment of twirling Jonathan around that dance floor. Because he told me when we danced, he said, "Now, Miss Timpson, when I say twirl, you twirl." Well, honey, I twirled till I was dizzy. That moment of twirling around that dance floor with Jonathan rippled into me. And I never knew when I began that AmeriCorps service the difference that it was going to make for me. And it's going to do it all for you. Now, at the end of this school year, Jonathan will graduate. And I will be at that graduation. And as he crosses that stage, I'll probably be imagining Jonathan and I twirling across that stage. So I'm going to challenge each and every one of you to give someone a twirl around the dance floor this year. And I think you'll be amazed how true that making a difference stuff is.